Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Happy Friday. We're now 2 weeks from the NBA trade deadline. It's creeping up on us, and that means we've got a ton of trade buzz to get into today. Even some last-minute stuff that came out literally as we were about to hit the record button. So we've got a bunch to talk about. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, you know what? I'll say this. As much as it felt like we were all ready and set to go, and you get that start stop of, oh no, wait, there's more news out. At least it didn't come out like right after we finished the show.
100%. Yeah, I would rather have it come out 5 minutes before than 5 minutes after, because 5 minutes before we can still work it into the show. And of course, we're full on in the 2 week window. We are hoping our phones will buzz mid show and give us some kind of a thing. I will say, I had to go in. This is the silliest thing. On the Dunkin' Donuts app, true Massachusetts kid here. I have my Dunkin' Donuts app.
Huh?
The when it gives a notification, it is the same notification as my Twitter notification sound.
No.
So I was like, that's got to be changed. You got to go, Dunkin'. No, that can't be. Also, on a Friday here, happy National Chocolate Cake Day. So, yeah, so get yourself a slice of chocolate cake at some point today. Apparently, I guess is a National Chocolate Cake Day, but that's not what anybody's here for. Let's talk some NBA stuff. Where are we starting today?
Well, let's start appropriately enough with the starters. The All-Star starters are out. They've been announced. There are maybe some surprises. So let me just run through the list, and then I'll get your take on it. So the Eastern Conference starters: Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, Kyrie Irving. Western Conference starters: LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Zion Williamson, Steph Curry, and Luka Doncic. Keith, any surprises there? I know we did our starters the other day, so we've kind of already given our opinions, but did anything really stand out to you here?
Yeah, let me say something on our picks too. I blew it because I was not aware you couldn't play with the position stuff. I thought you still could on all-star ballots. So I blew it. So I should have had Luke as a starting guard. I squeezed him into my starting front court. It didn't change who I would have picked.
We're allowed to make those kinds of adjustments here, right?
But I also, had I not done that, I would have had LeBron James in my starting group, just so everybody knows. I probably should have anyway, but whatever. We all knew he was going to start. I guess a couple things that stood out to me. One was Zion starting. Mm-hmm. That was a bit of a surprise. That just, and not just the fan vote, because right, fans love him because he's so fun. But he got a lot of votes from the players too.
Yeah,
the player vote was very high for him, if I remember correctly. So that was a little bit of a surprise. And then I guess in the East side, it was a little not a surprise because we knew someone out of the Embiid, Giannis, Durant, Tatum group was going to miss, and it was Joel Embiid, and that is unfortunate for him and just kind of a little broken, right? Probably not how it should be. The 4 best players in the conference should all be able to start the game, but it is what it is, especially too now where LeBron and Giannis are going to pick these teams and they can pick whoever they want. Like we probably shouldn't be so beholden to positions and forming these teams in the first place, but kind of is what it is. So there it is. But yeah, nothing jumps out, nothing egregious here where I'm like, oh my God, this guy shouldn't even have been on the team. Zion's probably the most questionable to even make the team just with the amount of time he's missed. But I had him on my team anyway because I wanted to give the Pelicans somebody. So I don't even have a huge issue with him starting. I think it's kind of fun.
I mean, there's no Andrew Wiggins in the starting 5 like last year. And Wiggins wound up being just fine and was huge in the playoffs. And so even looking back, I can't even say that was that egregious, but it feels like everybody that's there, those guys are deserving. But, one of the things that you've talked about quite a bit is people who say, well, take the vote away from the fans. And how can this player be ranked ahead of that player and all this kind of, first of all, it's not set up to be a true ranking of who is the best. You're not going to get a list of the 10 best guards and the 10 best forwards in order. That's not what you're going to get out of this kind of vote. But people who say, well, just give it all to the players. Keith, have you seen who got player votes?
Yeah.
Chet Holmgren
my gosh. He hasn't even played a game in the NBA period. And Chet Holmgren got 4 votes. Like, no.
Like they're just the guys just picked their friends. It's like, okay, Kendrick Nunn got a vote. Kendrick Nunn, he got a vote. like I mean, we got who else got votes? Willie Hernan Gomez got 5 votes.
Yeah,
Bull got 6 votes. Like,
I'll tell the story again. This was several years ago. This was pre-pandemic, but I was in the visiting locker room here in Orlando when guys were getting down to having to submit their ballots on the player side, and there were players in a locker room saying, "Hey, if you vote for me, I'll vote for you." And they're like, "All right, cool." And they proceeded to, I presumably did that. So it's just ridiculous, some of the stuff that's where I'm like, when everybody's like, oh, let the players should mean more, they should pick the entire teams. That's not, no, like that's that's crazy to me, especially when guys just, they don't take it serious, right? That's the challenge. And I think it's fine. 50% fans, 25% media, 25% players. I think that is perfectly fine. The game is for the fans. They should get to see the guys they want to see out there. If they want to see Zion, let them see Zion. As long as we don't get ridiculous stuff where guys who wouldn't make the team or have no business being anywhere near the team making it, that's a huge problem. And I think that whole giving the media and the players some say in it, that does keep that from happening. So yeah, it's one of those things where I don't know, I can't get too worked up over it.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not going to be too upset over that kind of stuff. And again, it's just, I was just bringing that up to underscore the point that the players aren't any better than the fans in terms of
worse,
the voting.
I think.
It doesn't get better.
Yeah.
All right,
let's to note too, just in case anybody is wondering, the reserves will be announced next Thursday ahead of the TNT games on that Thursday night. The reserves are voted on by the coaches. Just full disclosure, that's generally the assistant coaches will fill it out as a group. It's supposed to be the head coaches, but it's almost always the assistants, and that's part of the head coach saying, "Hey, you guys are the ones who are building the game plans, breaking down the film on these other teams." So that's that honor kind of goes to them. A lot of times the staff will fill it out together, and it's same kind of criteria. It's 3 front court, 2 back court, and then 2 wild card, and we'll find out those next Thursday.
Just a quick aside, and nothing we need to dive into, but for anybody who doesn't know, typically NBA benches, what coaches do is they take their assistant coaches and they divide up the league. And they'll say, okay, you are covering these 5, 6 teams, whatever it is, this number of teams. These are all yours. This is your responsibility to study up on this team and know all about them. And so that way you've got sort of an expert on each team before you go into that matchup. And so that's why the assistant coaches are going to have maybe a little bit more intel, more information. They spent more time watching, Sacramento or something like that, if that's the team that they were selected to cover.
Yeah, and just a little more inside baseball on it too. The coaches usually they divvy up the roster, and each assistant coach gets somewhere, depending on the size of the staff, somewhere between 2 and 4 players that are their guys, and they work them out. They work with them and all that sort of stuff. They're the ones you'll often see if you're in an arena early enough. You may see them sitting courtside watching a laptop, and they'll be breaking down with their guy. Generally, it's film of the opposing team. Sometimes it's like, hey, do you see, look at your jump shot looks a little off, let's work on this. Sometimes it's those kind of things, but it's usually film of the upcoming game. And then my favorite thing is, in every locker room, that night's opponent, usually their most recent, or maybe
they're playing it on the TV
game, it's playing on the TV, and you know who's watching it? Absolutely
nobody. Nobody.
No one's even looking.
Every locker room I've been in, no one is watching it.
No one's even taking a single look at it, which is always kind of funny.
Yep, it is. I agree. I always thought that was odd. All right, let's talk a little bit about the trade deadline stuff. This is what everybody wants to hear. Let's start by going up north. Fred VanVleet coming up big in the Klutch Sports could be the landing spot here for Fred VanVleet.
There it is, future Laker. That's how it goes, right? He's going to be a Laker.
but how, most of it feels like a good chunk of the Raptors, including Nick Nurse, are with Klutch Sports. So I don't like. Does this, Keith, let me just ask you this, because I saw this reaction a lot online of, that people acting as though, and I've heard this from buzz around the league too, this could impact his trade stock around, like, because certain teams don't want to deal with Klutch or do want to deal with Klutch? How big of a deal is this?
You don't think you're going to get the Raptors trading him because they don't want to deal with Klutch? Because, like you said, they've got a couple other Klutch
Right.
clients there already, including the coach. And, Nick Nurse is obviously very heavily embedded into, kind of the fabric of that franchise. So I don't think that's part of it. What it does say to me is Fred VanVleet is not changing agents right before free agency because he's going to opt in or because he's going to take less or even the same amount of money as he makes now. You do this because I want that probably for him in reality the last big contract he's going to get, just knowing he'll turn 30 likely during the course of his next deal. So that's all it says to me. Now if you're Toronto and you're looking and saying that's where it could change the trade math of we don't really want to pay you $25-30 million a year, so that could turn into all right, let's go. Mark Stein had some additional reporting. I guess it was this morning on the East Coast, late last night. It was super late at night.
I was in the middle of a live stream show when it came out.
Full disclosure, I was already asleep. Like I called it early and said, I'm just going to watch these late games in the morning. And I went to bed and woke up to it, which is always fun to wake up to, a nice trade piece sitting there. But he mentioned again, the Orlando Magic buzz continues to grow that the Magic may be interested in VanVleet. The one thing that's notable with that is Jeff Weltman was part of the Raptors front office when they did kind of find VanVleet and get him there in the first place. So I don't think changing agents necessarily means he's leaving, but the circumstances around it could lead to something happening here in the next week or two.
Yeah, certainly could, particularly with the uncertainty of free agency and all of that out there. All right, speaking of the Raptors, the Knicks reportedly have offered multiple firsts for Anunoby. Now, for OG Anunoby, as we've stressed in the past, though, not all firsts are equal.
And we've talked firsts. Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
We talked about
and
this
for those only listening, I'm putting first in quotations.
In air quotes. Yes. Yeah, good clarification there for the podcast listeners. So we talk about how you kind of have some fake firsts. What do you expect this Knicks offer to really be? We talked about this before, that the rumor was that there were 3 firsts on the table for Anunoby at some point. Most assumed it was from the Knicks. That was what reporting sounded like, but 3 firsts probably makes it sound like the offer is a bit richer than it actually is.
Yeah, it's probably, my guess is like 1, maybe 2 Knicks first, and then 1 or 2 of those protected firsts that they have. They're going to get the Dallas pick this year, barring the Mavs completely falling apart over the next couple of months and falling completely out, because the pick is only top 10 protected. So that pick will go to Dallas or go to New York. So they'll have their own, and they'll have Dallas this year. Then down the line, they have picks coming from Detroit and Washington, as well as Milwaukee. The Milwaukee one is in a couple years. It's 2025. Presuming Giannis is still there, that's probably going to be a late first. And then the Detroit and Washington picks, you're kind of like, those could get interesting. But they're very heavily protected. Even with some sliding protections, they still never get into that like super juicy, like, ooh, that could be a top 5 pick range. They'll never get there. So that's the little bit of the challenge with that, is it could be, from the Knicks side, if they're the ones leaking this, is, hey, we offered multiple first rounders, which isn't a lie. It's true. You did, but they're kind of not great first rounders if you get them. And there's a chance with a couple of them, you may never even see them because of the protections attached. So that's where, to your point, not all firsts are created equal. Like, we need to be a little more cautious, I think, with some of the things on this, so we don't super overreact. Because I did see a couple people today, like Raptors fans, being like, well, if we're getting 3 first rounders, like, what are we doing?
Right.
Yeah, if it was 3 straight Knicks first rounders, all right, maybe. Because who knows what they become in the next couple of years, right? But if it's these other ones with these heavy protections on them, that's probably, I'm going to need a little bit more.
It's similar in my mind to not all max contracts are created. Sometimes people hear, oh my gosh, this guy's getting a max deal. This is how you're going to pay him $50 million. This is insane. No, not every max contract is the same. Depends on the number of years and all of that. Same thing with first round picks. Not every first rounder is the same. So you always have to dig a little deeper and find out, okay, what are the protections on these? Where is this coming from? Like, the value can fluctuate wildly between one first rounder to the next.
Yep.
All right, let's jump to Utah. The Jazz, we had already heard that Lowry, Markkanen, and Walker Kessler are not on the market. Everybody else they're willing to listen on. Well, take one more off the list. Ochai Agbaji is apparently off the trade block, somebody that they would like to keep and are not going to entertain trades for.
Yeah, and that kind of makes sense, right? If you're the Jazz, you're basically saying, hey, we don't know on this guy yet. He was a first round pick. Cleveland obviously picked him and then got flipped to Utah down the line when the Mitchell trade came together. But he's starting to play more. He's been seeing regular minutes over, let's say, the last 3-4-ish weeks for the Jazz. He's interesting. So I think that is young kid potential. He's under team control. We don't really want to move him. It's similar to Walker Kessler, just on a lesser level. A little odd because Kessler's drafted several picks behind Agbaji, but Kessler's already proven he's starting center level in this league and can do a lot of good things. He's a good fit also in the front court with Lauri Markkanen. So yeah, that's one where I think as you kind of get into it, it's like, all right, but why not? You can't trade everybody. So if there's a couple of younger guys you like that are under team control, sure, hang on to those guys. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I understand why they'd be doing that. And I think they're definitely a team to watch as we get closer to the deadline here.
Yeah.
That could wind up moving some of these players that they've got, especially now they've dropped in the standings a bit. I think that frees them up to make some more moves.
10th as we record this on Friday afternoon. It's 5-5 in their last 10. They continue to kind of float around that 500 mark, but as we will stress repeatedly here, 26 losses is actually tied with the Lakers, who are 13th, and but somehow magically only 3 games behind the Pelicans, who are in 4th. So I mean, it's a bad week, and you could tumble in the standing, like literally fall 5-6 places in the standings in the West. It's just absolute bonkers.
It is going to be crazy. And I just hope that it stays that way all the way through, because we're going to get a crazy finish to the season for sure. In the
Western Conference. Though? Someone out of that group is going to say, and my God tells me it's probably Utah. It's like, but this is not what we want. We don't want to chase the play-in tournament, because I think the reality is, I think most of those teams, not most, I shouldn't say that, because the Kings, or not the Kings, the Suns, the Warriors, the Lakers, they're the Clippers, obviously, they're not worried about playing the Grizzlies or the Nuggets in the first round and feeling like, well, we can't solve that. But if you're like Utah, you're really feeling like, if we're in the play-in, we can beat Denver or Memphis. You're probably not feeling that way. So if I had to pick any one team out of that group to kind of say, let's go the other way, it would be Utah, just because somebody could do it. And no, you're not getting down to the Spurs, Rockets, Hornets, Pistons level, but you could get down to being the 5th worst team with relative ease. And then all of a sudden, if you get the 5th or 6th best lottery odds, that's not a bad spot to be in either.
No, especially not in this year's draft. That's for sure. All right. The Orlando Magic. Surprise, surprise. Not a surprise at all. Listening to offers for Mo Bamba, Gary Harris, Terrence Ross, and all-star vote getter RJ Hampton.
I like that all-star vote getter. That should be like on his basketball reference page,
like on his resume.
Yeah, right. Received 4 player votes in the All-Star game 2023. Really no surprises on any of these guys. Kind of going in reverse order here. Hampton had his 4th-year player option declined by Orlando. That's generally a sign the team is ready to cut bait and move on. Bamba, he doesn't really play now. He's now that they're basically healthy, and I'm going to knock on wood for the Magic because it's been a long time. Their front court is overstuffed. They've got a lot of guys there. So Bamba doesn't play a lot. So, unsurprising they'd be listening on him. Terrence Ross, it feels like finally, right? I mean, he's been the last man standing for the Magic for years as far as their veteran group go. And he's somebody I think, a lot of teams, it's going to get funny with him because it's like playing chicken. You're going to give up a second, or are you going to wait? Are you going or are we going to get him in buyout? Like, you're going to buy him out, or okay, do we have to trade for him? So I think that's going to be a little interesting to watch. Gary Harris, I feel probably the least likely gets moved. He actually plays a role. He starts for the team. He plays a big role in their backcourt. It sounds weird because it's not like Gary Harris is like a 12-year vet, but he is the veteran in that young backcourt. He's the guy who kind of organizes those young guys and keeps them going. And they really like him. And he's having a better year this year too. He's starting to shoot better. So that one I'm a little less certain of. The other three, I would not be shocked at all if they trade him. And they're not going to get great returns for any of them, but get a couple more picks to throw in the stash, clear up the books a little bit, and move forward with that way. No messes you have to handle in free agency. Why not?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Keith, what are the ongoing storylines in the upcoming trade deadline, whatever saga, has been that the asking price for players is very high.
Yep.
And it remains high. The Bulls said they would like to get 2 first-round picks for Alex Caruso. And I am about as big of an Alex Caruso fan as exists out there. And the Bulls are crazy. I don't know. I don't see anybody giving up 2 firsts for, and Caruso is great. He's one of the better guard defenders in the NBA. I don't see anybody giving up 2 firsts to get him, but I mean, I guess, hey, they can ask, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. Ask, right? I mean, why not? You ask for the moon, and who knows, right? Maybe you get a couple other planets or something. But yeah, I think that's silly, right? You're kind of in there. I just called the moon a planet, which is really embarrassing. The moon, I know the moon's not a planet. I'm aware. I did pass like 3rd grade solar system talk. Pluto was a planet back then. It no longer is. I hear
that is that's see Keith, you're revealing how old we are, because yes, I'm old enough to remember when Pluto was a planet.
That's it, yeah. Caruso, fine, right? Ask for 2 first-round picks. This is where you could say, if then let's say the Knicks traded for him, you'd be like, see, we got 2 firsts for him, just like we said, because we got that Detroit first and the Dallas first or something. And it's like, all right, I mean, you did, but you didn't get 2 great firsts. So that's where that gets a little goofy. But yeah, no one's giving up 2 quality firsts for Alex Caruso. Like, it's I'm a fan too. He's fit with just about anybody in the league as far as what he brings to a team. But yeah, that's probably the Bulls saying, we'd rather not. That's probably, hey, can we get Alex Caruso 2 firsts? No, we don't want to do that. But what do you think about Kobe White? Right? Like, that's kind of how that conversation goes.
Yep. Absolutely. My favorite Alex Caruso story is when someone photoshopped a workout picture of his and added, they went like Steve Rogers post super soldier serum, like Captain America on him, and made him look just completely jacked. And like within a week, he got randomly selected for a drug test by the NBA. It was absolutely fantastic. It was a very good Photoshop, and people thought it was
real. You guys
real.
called him Captain America for a while, right?
I did. I even called him Captain America for a bit off of that. All right. Speaking of the Bulls may want to trade Andre Drummond. Now, I know you took to Twitter to explain why, and I know you are a huge Andre Drummond fan. You are the head of the Andre Drummond fan club. So I understand, but you talked about why you think that teams maybe should trade for him.
Yeah, and Trevor's being extremely facetious.
Yes, that is sarcasm there.
I'm not the biggest fan of Andre Drummond, but that was Andre Drummond when he made a lot of money. I did not think he was worth all that money. And I feel I've been pretty validated over the last few years that Andre Drummond is probably not a top tier starting center and all those things. There was a period of time where Celtics fans were like, we have to get this guy, like just anything we got to do to go get Andre Drummond. And I never got it because I'm like, he's not a great defender. He's can't do anything except really dunk the ball. Like, he's not a great screener. He's a fantastic, phenomenal rebounder, an unbelievable rebounder, but it's almost kind of like in his area, he doesn't chase down rebounds. Like, it's just kind of weird. But anyway, Andre Drummond on a $3 million contract, sure, go get him. That's almost anybody can do that. And I mistakenly said on a minimum this morning when I tweeted about that before I had my coffee. And I was like, I meant to say a near minimum contract because that's really what that is. Anybody can trade for him, and sure, teams should be taking a look at it because that starts to become all right. Andre Drummond at that amount to be your backup 5, that's pretty good. And like Philly has not really filled that hole. I don't know that I want to be going into playoff series with Montrezl Harrell as my only option as my backup 5 behind Joel Embiid. God forbid Embiid goes down as we've seen him do late in seasons in the past. Like they should be in on Drummond. And this is another one, though. Teams are going to play chicken because what they're going to do is they're going to say, doesn't really play for the Bulls right now. He's almost kind of completely out of the rotation. Yeah, they're just going to buy him out and go from there. Now, he does have a player option for next year, so that makes it a little trickier. If the Bulls wanted to buy him out, they may not want to eat that money, but it's only just over $3 million, so it's not so much that I think they would hesitate too much. But yeah, interesting. I would keep an eye on him. It was funny. I had somebody ask me, should the Lakers try to get him? And I'm like, I think the Lakers have been there, done that. I don't see them going for the return Andre Drummond trip.
Keith, that's the anyone can come up on the market, and it's what should the Lakers consider? That's
same thing with the Celtics fans. It's probably every fan. We just happen to be cover teams with massive fan bases that do that.
Absolutely. So, now, I will say, you just start your countdown because it's only a matter of time before you hear a counter leak suggesting that the Bulls will never buy out Andre Drummond because that's what every team has to do. Because if it just absolutely destroys trade value if word starts to get out that you might buy a player out, because then nobody wants to give up anything for a guy they can get for free in a month. So usually what happens is you get a counter leak that comes out that says, no. Anybody who wants him has to trade for him. Come on, fork over something. That's what happens.
I can't remember the guy's name, but it's like in Moneyball when he calls the San Francisco Giants GM and he's like trying to get him to throw in another guy who's like from the minor leagues that, gosh, now I can't even think of the actor's name, but he used to be chubby, right? Seth, he plays Pete in Moneyball. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah.
I wanted to say Seth Rogen. It's not Seth Rogen. It's, the other guy, Seth Rogen's friend. Right?
Why am I blanking on this name too? I was just looking at him at a movie that he's in.
Yeah. Anyway, it's like in that thing when he says the
Jonah Hill. Jonah Hill. I didn't even need to look
Jonah
it up.
Hill.
Oh my gosh. It's the end of the day Friday. This is what's happening.
So Jonah Hill's like tells him the name of the minor league player, and he
says the wrong name.
GM's like I like that guy. And he's like, you don't even know who he is.
Michelson.
Right? Michelson or something like that, right? It is
right.
Michelson, I think. Yeah. He's like, you don't even know who Michelson is, and he's like, I don't know, and he's like, so that's like where it is where somebody's like, you don't even want Andre Drummond, like, we're not giving you a second round pick for him,
right?
So, wow, that was exactly.
Oh man,
we're on a journey there.
We better land our plane here before we go off the rails or anything else happens here. Okay, let's jump to the Blazers. They've reportedly offered an extension to Jerami Grant, 4 years, $114 million. So far, he's not signed that, which is we talked about Fred VanVleet earlier. That was also the rumor, was that in the offseason, VanVleet was offered a 4-year deal, similar money by the Raptors, and was not willing to sign that. Is this something that if you were Grant's agent, would you be advising him to sign this, or is he better off waiting till the summer?
I would take it. I don't know that he's going to get this kind of money this summer. That's a lot. That is, what does that work out to? That works out to about $28 million a year. That's you're just shy of a max there. For his years of service, you're about 10 million shy, but that's a lot of money. It's Jerami Grant is probably a tier 2-3 free agent this summer. I might have to really go through. I haven't fully completed free agent rankings yet. I'm kind of in the point where I've got them in tiers and I just keep kind of moving guys around in that list. But I don't know that there's going to be $28 million out there for him. I certainly don't know that there's going to be 30 plus. And maybe that's where they're thinking is like, okay, if we can get 30 plus million, like from Team X, like here we go. And I'm just not sure the teams with cap space are going to do that. Now, that said, I didn't see the Pistons doing that for Jerami Grant a few years ago either, and they did. So that's where, sometimes you gamble with this. And I think the other thing may be, hey, we know this will be out there if we, it's still going to be sitting there because this is something Jerami Grant can sign all the way till June 30th.
Yeah.
This doesn't have to be signed now or anything like that. So he can do this for, a couple more months at least, and go all the way out until the end of the season. And then, if he's like, yeah, I don't want to be in free agency, and the Blazers are like, yeah, we love you, we'd like you to stay, then you could do that. But yeah, it is curious to me that he didn't just immediately take it, because it's not like Portland can up that offer any more. This came out of Jake Fisher's piece over at Yahoo, which literally dropped minutes before we started recording, and we flew through it. So good stuff from Jake.
I wonder, it reminds me a little bit of the Robert Covington situation. I believe it was from last summer, where the Clippers, like right before free agency started, or a few weeks before, they signed Covington to a deal that was slightly above the mid-level, just to get it done. It was like they probably just gave up a little bit extra and said, here, this is what we're willing to give you in exchange for you not exploring free agency.
Yeah, and they did the same with Zubac too.
Correct. Yeah, I wonder if we see something here where, like, a few weeks before free agency hits, next thing you know, he signs it and he gets like a player option on the last year or something, like, some little extra to kind of just push it over the top there and get the deal done. Because to the Blazers, I think it's probably worth it to just have that certainty of knowing you're not going to see Jerami Grant walk away.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm hesitating is I worry about Portland locking in too much money for too many guys who aren't true second stars next to Dame. You did their roster's already pretty expensive. If you add Grant at 25 to 30 million, and you've got Simons and you've got Nurkic, and you start adding those things up, it just starts to get to be a very, very expensive team for a team that really hasn't shown it can be much more than maybe we can get into the 5-6 range, but most of we're probably going to be down in the play-in range like that. I just worry about that. That's my only hesitation on this. It's like Jerami Grant is 25 or 26 anymore, where it's like, hey, we're going to pay him. He might really pop and develop. I think we kind of know what he is. So that's where, it is. It's one of those things where it's tricky, right? This is kind of like almost like a pre-bird rights trap, because you're not really there yet, but you could get kind of stuck in that bird rights trap. And for those who don't know what that is, the idea of the bird rights trap, John Hollinger, I think was the one who coined that, we can't replace the guy if he leaves because we don't have cap space. We don't have significant money to spend. So because we have the bird rights, we have to re-sign him. And that's, you kind of trap yourself into doing a contract you don't necessarily love. And Portland kind of did that with Yusuf Nurkic last year.
And it can put you in a tough spot in terms of flexibility, not just because you get the money on the books, but you have a contract that then can get viewed around the NBA as a negative value, which then, can definitely complicate trade situations.
Now, cap's going up, so if you could lock him into money now, that's not the end of the world. It'll be a less percentage of the cap down the line, but a lot of things to consider if you're Portland.
One of my favorite players from the draft a couple of seasons ago, Bones Hyland, getting some buzz on the trade front. What would be the incentive to move on from Bones Hyland at this point?
Yeah, I struggle unless the Nuggets really said, hey, we got to get a bigger wing or something in here to back up our starters. The Michael Porter Jr. situation's a little messy right now. We haven't covered it too much, but all reports are his brother was involved in a drunk driving accident that involved a fatality. Michael Porter Jr. has been away from the team while that's been going on. So we don't really know where that's going with that situation, and all the best to everybody involved there, especially, the family of the person who lost their lives. But in this situation if you're the Nuggets, unless you're thinking like, we got to cover ourselves because we don't know if we're going to get him back. We don't know what that's going to look like. He has had injuries. If we can move Hyland, we can get by a point guard because Bruce Brown's done well when he's been tasked with running the offense. And the reality is the offense runs through Nikola Jokic anyway. But more for me, I would not really be moving Bones Hyland because there's no guarantee Bruce Brown's sticking around. He signed a 2-year deal, but he's got a player option for next season that he's going to opt out of because it's only $6.8 million. You're only going to have non-bird rights, so you can't give him that big of a bump in pay. So I'm just not sold Bruce Brown as long-term for the Nuggets. They can't extend him. They can't do anything like that. They're going to be an over the tax team, so they're not going to have the full mid level to give him. So it's just kind of messy. So I think there is a good chance we see Bones Hyland stick as almost the Bruce Brown insurance in case one of these cap space teams is like, hey, Bruce Brown, you want 15 million to play for us? Let's go.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, let's jump over to the Brooklyn Nets. Kyrie Irving potentially extending and staying there after all the drama of the summer and all the drama that we had during the season as well. Maybe he does just wind up sticking in Brooklyn long term. What would an extension look like for him as opposed to just getting into free agency? Is there much of a market out there this summer?
Yeah, it's that second part that we're starting to get a little bit of reporting. I think Brian Windhorst, it was Chris Haynes had the initial report of Kyrie wants to extend with the Nets, which it was Danny LaRue of The Athletic and Dunked On and all that said, perhaps setting a record from we'll never play for this team again to, I want to extend like the transition time,
Right.
which I thought was pretty funny. That made me chuckle. But it is Chris's initial reporting. Then Brian Windhorst added, Kyrie sounds like they're looking at and saying, there may not be max money out there for us because the cap space teams might not be overly interested in if you look at it, kind of makes sense, right? Like, what does Houston want with Kyrie Irving? San Antonio, Orlando, Indiana, those kind of teams. That's not where they are, right? They're not ready for a guy like him. And he's doesn't want to be on a team like that where it's going to be, hey, I get to lift and carry everybody and all these kids. So what it turns into is the Lakers are sitting out there with 30 plus million still, even after the Hachimura deal. They could say, hey, move on. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be very, very difficult for the Lakers to get to much more than that. And
Yeah.
no way can they get to Kyrie's max unless they moved AD or LeBron. And then at that point, why you're trading for Kyrie. So my guess is Kyrie has looked at the landscape and said, I don't know that I love any of those teams.
Yeah.
And then it's turned into, all right, hey, Brooklyn, things are going well now. We've moved past what happened earlier this year with his comments and all those things, and we're going with this, and let's see where it goes from here. And I think if you're the Nets, you're going to be looking at it and saying, all right, hey, if we go deep enough into the playoffs, and Kevin Durant is now happy here, and this, let's get Kyrie locked up. I would make sure I had some protections, or I'd do it as a shorter term deal, which could also work for Kyrie. Because if Kyrie started doing maybe like 2+1 deal, then he gets back on the market again. He could really cash in as the cap goes up. That might not be a bad idea for him either. I would not be like, all right, you want to do a full 5-year deal this summer or a 4-year max extension right now? That's probably a bit too much for me. If I'm Brooklyn, that's just too much risk there that something's going to go sideways at some point in that deal. And now you're left kind of, all right, what do we do?
Right. I think that's something we've talked about seriously, it's been 7-8 months now since we talked about Kyrie and potentially what he was going to do in his next contract. So if you're Brooklyn, you probably do want to have some type of protection built in to whatever this extension would look like, whatever this next deal would look like. But he's also played extremely well. So that's something that, he's been fantastic. And so obviously he's an all-star starter this year and all of that. So I don't think keeping him is the wrong path or anything for Brooklyn. I think that they've showed that they can be a very dangerous team this year. And, when you're having success, the reaction tends to be, let's keep this going. So I'm not that surprised really that we're starting to hear, maybe that there could be an extension out there.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Yeah, I think right now we're in happy times for the Nets. So it's very easy to say, hey, this is all great. Let's keep things moving. If things aren't so happy, do minds start to change there? One thing I do want to say with Kyrie too, because we I think very fairly criticize and beat him up when he does the things that we think are a little crazy and a little out there, and the things we don't agree with. To be fair, this guy has given super generously to a lot of causes. You see it. I think he tries to do it very quietly and almost anonymously. And then it's all of a sudden, people like Kyrie Irving, fully funded my dad's operation, or, made sure all the rent was paid for these people. And now he's been very public and outspoken that he wants to be a part of trying to help the WNBA players. And this is absolutely bat crap crazy. I'll try to keep it clean. He wants to try to help them get chartered flights because they fly commercial.
I saw that.
Which is just they're professional athletes. Like, what are we doing? You know, and as an entire league, like there's been all these things of like, it doesn't even cost that in general terms, right? Sports
And,
money terms. It doesn't cost
and
that
now
much
there's
to fly
security
the ball.
concerns too.
Yeah, because they're talking about Brittany Griner needs to be
Yeah.
very careful and those kind of things. So Kyrie's been very, very heavily involved and very outspoken of like, hey, we can do a lot more as NBA players to try to help out here. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's a big part of, hey, let's give some money to the WNBA players to get them chartered flights when their season starts up a little bit later this spring, because that just does seem bonkers and very, very backwards and sideways to me. That's like not how that should be.
Keith, you know what's something that bugs me, and you and I both have daughters, so I'm sure you're right there with me. It drives me crazy that anytime anything gets brought up remotely about the WNBA, people feel like they have to jump in the comments and talk about how they don't watch it or how terrible it is or something like
Cool,
it's not
don't watch it.
necessary. Yeah, if you don't want to watch it, then don't watch it. But it's like people have to like take this victory lap of like, I don't watch the WNBA, whatever. Like, you know what? Like they run some really great, like if you like basketball, they run some really cool stuff.
You like
in the
basketball,
WNBA.
it's like purist. Like that's the highest level pure basketball you're probably going to get. Like, they're unbelievable. And it's also ridiculous when some dude who looks like me and is, fat and, 5'9" is like, I could score 25 points. No, you couldn't. You couldn't. You last about a minute. Like they're huge. A lot of them, right? They're like 6'5", 6'7", 6'8", and they're good. Very, very talented. Like you could not hang random average Joe out there. I always equate it to like, I don't watch hockey and I don't like hockey, but I don't go around trying to find random dudes who mention hockey or like somebody brings it up. There's a lot of crossover, right? Sometimes like Boston media members will be covering a Bruins game. I don't jump in there like, I don't watch hockey. It's stupid.
Right.
Like, don't like, why? I would never do that. Like, hey, you enjoy hockey? Cool. Like, let people like what they like. Like, it's, within reason, right? And as long as you're not hurting anybody, let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. Like, absolutely. I don't get it, man. And we could do I could go on a huge rant because we're going through some stuff right now where it's like, we're not getting resources for our daughter soccer team that some of the boys teams and the clubs get and those kind of things. And it's just, it's very clear where the priorities are. And, and these boys teams aren't good and don't win. And, our team does all the time. And it's like, hey, what are we doing here? It's kind of like when the U.S. women's soccer team were like, hey, we win World Cups and Olympic gold medals. Like the men don't even make it sometimes. Like who should be getting paid more here? And I get that's not a super easy conversation, but there's no reason to crap all over the WNBA.
Yeah, and I understand there's revenue arguments and stuff like that in terms of how much is actually being brought in and all that stuff can get, but that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down. But just in general, like you don't have to jump in to comment.
Yeah, what do you get?
It's like a race. It's like a race. Oh, somebody said something about the WNBA. Yeah. Quick, I need to make sure everyone knows that I don't watch it and I would never watch it and I'm better and all this stuff. Like, who cares?
Cool. Yeah, great. I watch it because it's on in the summertime when there's not other basketball and I like basketball. So, there it is.
All right. Let's go to the New Orleans Pelicans. Reportedly offering Jackson Hayes, Najee Marshall, Devontae Graham out there on the market. Not a surprise. They're not going to trade away like their core pieces. These are kind of their fringe guys that they'd be looking to potentially move, but they could be a landing spot again. This is not the first time they've popped up as a landing spot for John Collins, who's a guy who we've spent a ton of time talking about. Hayes, Marshall, Graham, like those guys aren't moving the needle, I wouldn't think, to get John Collins, but could you build the basis of it, kind of the backbone of a trade, and then you add some other things with some value to get something done there?
Yeah, I think so. And I think what you're looking at is the reporting is the Hawks want to add some defensive guys, which Najee Marshall is. So that would make some sense there. Jackson Hayes would give them another young kind of athletic big that they could maybe take a look at next to Onyeka Okongwu off the bench in some lineups. And Devontae Graham, just another ball handler shooter coming off the bench. He's probably better than Aaron Holiday. I don't know if in the role that they would need him to play if he is, but we would see. And I think the big thing on the Hawks would be here is you would presumably, if that's a return, maybe we don't need to give up a pick to move Collins' salary, because we've heard that being a thing that a handful of teams will be like, yeah, we'll take him, but you're going to give us a pick too because of how much he's owed. And that's a little, for me, that's too far.
Surprising.
I would not be doing that, but this might be one where, hey, if New Orleans, and remember, New Orleans has those extra picks coming their way from the Lakers. Everybody knows those ones. But I think people forgot they have extra picks coming from the Bucks too, from the Drew Holiday trade before the DAD deal, or I guess it was like around the same time of it, is it? But anyway, they're in a position where, hey, we could maybe they could throw a pick and go get Collins. So there could be something to this. I don't know. I find it weird that the Pelicans are this like hot for John Collins, because that is a weird spot where I don't necessarily get the fit. Like, you already have Zion, you have Jonas Valanciunas, you already have Larry Nance. So Collins is going to be like, not saying he's the fourth guy, but like four guys that need to play.
He's a little superfluous. Yeah.
Yeah. None of them can play the three. I mean, I guess, I don't know, maybe he could play Zion down if he really wanted to. And I know Nance used to do that. I don't think he can still defend out there the way he used to, but I don't know. It just seems a little weird to me. But
yeah, but if the value is there, I get it.
Yeah,
but it could work out though. All right, let's finish things off here with some bankruptcy. So I didn't realize this was going on, but apparently Bally is going bankrupt, and they cover a lot of NBA teams, the local markets. So what does this mean for the league? We know TV rights are going to be up for negotiation soon. So how does all of this get wrapped into this bigger story?
Yeah, so this is still very much a developing story. So we're just kind of covering here just as hey, this is going on, and this could bleed into things like how much does the cap go up and all those sorts of things. So Bally Sports, basically think of them as what the regional Fox Sports networks used to be. When Fox sold everything to Disney, the United States government said you cannot have ESPN and all the Fox regional. That's a that's a monopoly. Like, you have to spin and sell those off. So Disney started to sell off all of the regional sports networks into different things, and all the bunch of the Fox Sports regions went into Bally regions, and they basically, how most people noticed this was, oh, that's weird. It's not Fox Sports Florida anymore. It's Bally Sports Florida, right? Like that's the big thing. But here's what you need to know as far as the NBA goes. 16 teams have regional contracts with Bally, that's their local provider. And there's a whole bunch of them. I could run through all the teams, but it's none of the super duper big markets, but it's 16 teams nonetheless. Now, what that means is if they cannot deliver the money that they owe on these, that's less money coming into the NBA. Now, it's nowhere. This is a fraction, a super duper tiny. I'm on the screen making a little tiny thing, the size of the national TV deals, which that's what's up here in the next year or so, is the national TV deals with TNT, ESPN, and those broadcasters. So, but what this could be is we could see the league say, we're taking back those rights, and all of the Orlando Magic games, if you want to see them, those are all now going to be seen on Amazon Prime. If Amazon wanted to start buying into a package. And then over the years, they could start to say, hey, you know what, Team X, your deal's up with NBC Sports. We're going to fold you back in under our bigger umbrella. This is something Apple just did. They bought MLS. They're going to show all the MLS games. Now we're starting to see more and more of these kind of big streaming. Now, where this could be a huge win for the fans is, one of the things that we're hearing a lot of talk of is, well, if we don't have the regional sports networks, we can get rid of the blackouts. And then all of a sudden, these games are available to everybody. You're going to have to pay for them somehow. They're not going to be free, but you sign up for, streaming product X, and it's there, and off you go. So this is just something to keep an eye on, something we're going to keep watching over the next, months and probably couple years here to see how this all plays out. There maybe somebody comes in and buys the Bally Sports feeds up and says, we're gonna buy them, and we'll relaunch under the NBA front office show presents Orlando Magic. Like, I wish we had that kind of money.
That sounds pretty
But
good.
it does,
Let's
right?
make that
Yeah, we
happen.
should. Yeah, guys, kick us a little bit on our Venmos, and we'll
Yeah.
all make this happen. Yeah,
Just to throw in a few super chats and we'll be good to go.
Yeah, a few thousand of them at about $1 million a piece, and we'll be good
No
to
problem.
go. But yeah, so just something we're keeping an eye on a little bit here is the league goes into some new things, and a lot of things we've seen it, right? The NFL piss change is funny. I think of like my dad is like, I don't even know where the hell to find these games now because it's on like Amazon Prime and all that stuff. But it's just going to continue to change in sports, and in some ways it's going to change for the better, and other ways it might get a little bumpy. But I think in general you're gonna find your games in different places coming forward.
Yep. Yeah. Which look, if the trade-off is like ultimately, if we wind up with all the games in one place and no blackouts, that's what we've been asking for forever, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it'll ever get it back, actually to that point. Probably not, but still, getting rid of blackouts, I think, would be a big win.
Huge. And it's a big win too, because like we've talked about, we all know people who live in sometimes they're in like an awkward area. Like I know people who live in Connecticut, and it's like I get weird blackouts from both New England and New York, like both Boston and New York teams.
Right.
And like it's just, it's awkward, and I want to do that. And I know people are like, man, I'm not paying for cable to have the one local sports channel. That's the only thing I'd ever watch on there. So that gets a little awkward. But yeah, I think anything these leagues can do to make their games more accessible to more people, that's in the end, even if it's in a slightly different way and maybe a little harder for some folks, but it's still there. I think that's the best way to go about this. And that's a big change I think we're going to see.
Yeah, agreed. All right, well, let's head off to the weekend on that. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Of course, if any kind of crazy trade news breaks or anything over the weekend, we will jump on here and do another show. But otherwise, we will see you all on Monday. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel and follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.